Welcome to the OJP Financial Management Virtual Seminar, or FMVS, a training series to help grantees effectively manage their federal awards. My name is Jamil Evans, and welcome to the opening session, or actually session 2. Successfully managing your grant award through strong financial analysis and internal controls. This session highlights the essentials of good financial and budget analysis to ensure all costs are necessary, reasonable, allowable, allocable. Attendees will learn the key components of establishing and maintaining strong internal controls to safeguard cash and valuable assets. So today's learning objectives are: 1, learn to apply cost principles across different budget categories. 2, learn the key components of strong internal control systems. And 3, learn to access various training and technical assistance or TTA materials developed by OJP TFSC to help grantees effectively manage their grant awards. All right, but before we get started, if you are experiencing any technical issues for this webinar, please let me know in the chat box. So let's go over a couple of Zoom tips. On the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you see a microphone icon. You can adjust your audio options and you can mute and unmute with this button. If you're not speaking today, please ensure you mute yourself just to avoid any background noise or any interruptions. To the right of the microphone icon, you see a video icon. This is where you can adjust your video options and start and stop your video. To the right of those icons, you'll see a chat icon, and this is where we'll communicate with everyone on the platform today. So let's post in the chat your last weather report for where you're living now. And I see all the answers flooding in. I see it's working for everyone. Please keep in mind when typing in the chat box, the default setting is to message everyone. If you need to send a message privately, just select the drop-down menu and choose your recipient. On the top right-hand side of the screen, you can change your viewing experience, and this is where you can go with speaker view or grid view. Finally, it is my pleasure to introduce our instructors for today. First, we'll have Crystal McNeil-Wright. Crystal is the Associate CFO for the Grants Financial Management Division in the Office of Justice Programs. She brings more than 30 years of leadership and management experience in accounting and finance, both from the private and public sectors. Then we'll have Russ Bermejo. Russ is a Senior Training and Technical Assistance Specialist for the OJP TFSC and brings more than 10 years of experience with projects serving children and families affected by child maltreatment and substance use disorders. Then we'll have Rosabelle Loya. Rosabelle is a project operations specialist for the OJP, TFSC, and TFMC. Rosabelle brings 10 years of experience in finance, victim services, operations, training, and technical assistance. We'll also have Zarel Acevedo. Zarel is a financial specialist for the OJP, TFSC, and a native of Puerto Rico. We'll also have Carlin Herbst. Carlin is a financial specialist for the OJP TFSC, serving the American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. We'll also have Nicole Zamora Nisbet. Nicole is a financial specialist for the OJP TFSC, serving the American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Also joining us is Celine Avelis. Celine is a financial specialist for the OJP TFSC and brings more than 15 years of management experience in accounting and finance from both the private and public sectors. Last and certainly not least, we'll have Francis Mendez. Francis is the project director for the OJP TFSC, bringing 25 years of experience in justice and victim services programs, financial management, and technical assistance. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Christine. Christine, take it away.
Thank you so much, excuse me and excuse my door in the background, but thank you so much, Jamil. My name is Crystal McNeil-Wright. And as Jamil said, I'm the Associate CFO of the Grants Financial Management Division here at OJP. I want to welcome you all again to session 2. I do hope that session 1 was good for you. I know it was a lot of information. It's an overload of information, but we want you to really take the time to go through the LMS platform and kind of review some of that. And of course, bring any questions that you have to us, and if there's anything that you don't understand. Let's go over the agenda for today. So what we're going to do is I'll talk a little bit about the schedule and what's to come. And then we're going to have a grantee engagement activity. Of course, this is our little icebreaker type activity that we'll do. And then our first presentation will be financial analysis. And then we'll have a learning activity. And of course, we'll go in this presentation, you'll learn a lot about budget categories and what's to be included in them. We'll go through our next presentation, which will be establishing strong internal controls. And then we'll have a breakout discussion. I do want you to understand the breakout discussion is an opportunity for you to really bring your questions, really bring some of your concerns, and allow us to assist you. Some of my staff from OCFO will be in those breakout sessions, as well as the TFSC financial specialists and their staff. And there we will be able to address any burning questions you may have, any concerns, any challenges, and allow us to help you. This is a technical assistance opportunity. It's not an opportunity to really find things. It's nothing like that. We're working collaboratively so that we can help you manage your grant. After that, we'll have a general Q&A and discussion, and then we'll discuss resources, next steps, and closing. So if we look quickly at the schedule, so we are here session 2. So here we'll be going through all the topics that I discussed, and the list of resources under TTA resources, you'll see there will be some job aids and videos and things that are in relation to internal controls, property and equipment, supplanting, audit requirements. You'll be able to review those on the LMS platform. I do want to draw your attention to the schedule. We did recognize that we had scheduled a session on President's Day, which is a holiday for many. So we did shift things a little bit. So you'll notice that session 4 and 5 have been pushed out just a bit. Of course, you know, we look forward to seeing you in those sessions. So thank you so much again for joining us. We hope that everything you learn and hear today is beneficial to you in managing your grant. I'm going to turn it over to Russ and Rosabelle, who will go through our first grantee engagement activity.
Yep, thank you, Crystal. And welcome everyone to session 2. My name is Russ Bermejo, and I'm going to invite my colleague, Rosabelle Loya. And we're going to go through just a few questions on the Mentimeter. So if you have your phone, go ahead and scan the QR code or enter the code when you visit menti.com, and you'll be able to participate in this activity. Rosabelle, welcome. Do you want to say hi to our attendees today?
Sure. Hola, buenas tardes y buenos días. Hello, everyone. My name is Rosabelle, and I'm a project operations specialist here at TFSC. Mi nombre es Rosabelle y soy especialista en operaciones de proyectos aquí en TFSC.
All right, let's just take an extra moment for you to do this. Rosabelle, you've had a chance to visit grantees in America Samoa, correct? So if you are from America Samoa, you might have met Rosabelle last year.
Algunos de los territorios que he tenido el privilegio de visitar son América Samoa.
Okay, let's go with question number 1.
Okay. If you could be great at any Olympic sport, which would it be? Si pudiera ser estupendo en cualquier deporte olímpico, ¿cuál sería?
Now, Rosabelle, I'm always interested on the responses here, especially people that are from island communities. Sometimes we'll see ice skating and slalom skiing, but of course we'll see the summer sports.
Swimming, rowing.
Yep. Gymnastics. Track. Roosevelt, what
Soccer.
about you? If you could be great at any Olympic sport, what would you be great at? Roosevelt?
I would say soccer. I,
Okay.
I suck at running, but it would be nice to be able to run. Para
And you-
mí, si yo pudiera ser estupenda en cualquier deporte, me gustaría ser futbolista.
Yep. And thank you, Howard, and thank you, Caroline, for putting those in the chat. That's fine too. Kelly, swimming, marksmanship. Okay, these are interesting. Yep. Okay, thank you. Ice dance, of course. This is one of my favorite questions we ask. Roosevelt, go for it.
What food recommendation would you give to anyone visiting your town, city, or island for the first time? ¿Qué plato de comida le recomendarías a cualquiera que visite tu pueblo, ciudad o isla por la primera vez?
This is one of the first questions we ask when we arrive because you want to enjoy good food. There's foodies on our team. So we're always interested in what we should try. So what do we have here? Yeah, shrimp tacos. Of course, chicken Calaguan from Guam and the Northern Marianas. It's so good when we tried the red rice, of course.
So food, that sounds so good. Arroz con gandules. A mí me encanta el arroz con gandules.
I see something interesting. Salmonberry akutak Eskimo. If you want to explain, I think I know what that is, but if you want to put that in the chat, I'm fascinated. I might have to look that up. That's a first time for me. Thank you for sharing. And mofongo.
Mofongo, so good.
All right. Oh, thank you, Louise. Yeah. Yeah, I tell you what, we always enjoy good food, so thank you for sharing. These are great. Okay, we have one more question.
In one word, describe how you feel about managing your federal award. En una palabra, describa cómo se sienten con respecto a la administración de su subvención federal.
Yeah. We want to thank you for your work in this important area. And so we just wanted to see, and it could be a mixed bag for sure, right? So challenging, overwhelmed. Oh, I like privileged. I like
Good.
that. Yeah. Stress.
Scared. Somebody said scared. That's very honest.
Yes. Bureaucracy. I see that. Comfortable.
That's great.
I like seeing that. Well, thank you for participating, and we hope that your time here with FMVS will help you become more comfortable, more excited, and confident in terms of the way you manage your federal grant awards. Again, as Crystal said, we are here to support you. So in whatever ways that we can do that, please reach out to us. Just as a reminder, the LMS is open. Session 3 is open right now, and the idea is that you will review those materials in session 3 before we return and meet again next week. And we will be launching 4 and 5 after we meet next week. So, but you are able to access number 3 after today. Right after the session, you should be able to go in and start accessing information. Well, Roosevelt, thanks for helping out.
Gracias. Muchas gracias por participar. Bye.
Yep. Okay. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. And I am excited to introduce to you my colleague, Zarel Acevedo. He's going to talk about financial and budget analysis.
All right. Thank you, Russ.
Yep.
All right. So the first part of this second session is going to be on financial and budget analysis. Next slide, please. All right. So now we're presenting the main categories that you should have in your budget. Keep in mind that within your organization, you could have different names and different titles for these categories, but at the federal level, these are the ones we use, okay? So when you do, federal budgets and reports, use these ones, okay? Now I'm just gonna mention them one by one. The first one is personnel. Second one is fringe benefits. We have travel, we have equipment, we have supplies, construction, subawards, procurement, other, and then the indirect category. All right, so the first category we're going to cover is personnel, okay? And there are sort of 5 characteristics to the personnel category. First are the positions, right? Is this a grant coordinator? Is this a financial manager? Okay. After that, we have the title, which could be director, secretary, sheriff. That's interesting. It's important to mention here that you should not include a name only, okay? Use an actual position, okay? Because, unfortunately, we have people that could move on from a project, and then, if the title of the position is not clear, just to know what they do, okay? And then we have the percentage of time. Okay. Remember that when we talk about percentage of time, it should be reflective of what they're actually working on the project. You could have someone within your organization that is working on, let's say, 4 awards. That does not mean necessarily that that person is going to be working evenly or have their time distributed evenly among these 4 awards. So, maybe it's not true. It's not what real that you say they're going to work 25% on each project. Okay, so you have to do some sort of actual hour or time analysis to actually allocate the hours that that person will actually work on each award. Okay. So after that, we have compensation. Okay, the compensation should be shown annually, okay? And then after it's shown annually, you should only present, again, the portion that is going to be allotted to the award. In this example, we show 60,000. If it's going to be 50% that this person is going to be giving to your award, and in your budget, you're going to present half of that, right? It's going to be 30,000. All right, and then the next category is increases. This is sort of category that we tend to not take into consideration, but we have to, right? Because in reality, there are increases that could go on year to year. Okay, cost of living, allowances, and raises. Okay. All right, so now we have fringe benefits. If you have personnel, it's not only their salary that you're going to be paying, you also have to cover their benefits. What's included? Okay, so you have FICA, you have health insurance, you have retirement, and you have workman's compensation. Okay, this can be presented as a percentage of the salary, but if you can go ahead and actually calculate that amount and include the actual dollar amount, that could be done as well. Okay. Remember, benefits for executives, like bonuses, are allowable. Also, I did not mention it on the first slide. Remember that all costs must be necessary, reasonable, allowable, and allocable. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So the next category that we have is travel. You should have a travel policy within your organization, but if you don't, you can always use the federal policy. Okay. Remember that if you choose the federal policy, you can't change. Okay. You can't be going back and forth. You have to stick to it. Okay. The computation. Okay. So when we talk about computation, it's take into account all the people that are going to travel and then multiply that by the actual cost per person. Okay. The purpose, okay, remember that it has to be justified. It can't be travel just for traveling, okay? Examples of justified traveling is training, right? If you have a ticket training, out of town, that's allowable. Also visiting award sites, that is also an allowable travel expense, okay? Then we have per diem. Okay, again, back to the policy. If you have your own guideline, use that one. If you don't, use the federal guideline, okay? If the federal guideline provides a lower per diem than yours, you can use your own, but remember it has to be justified, okay? And then we have transportation. Okay, so we're talking about airfare, we're talking about taxis. You have to include everything that you expense once you leave your house, okay? Having said that, for airfares, it could be very difficult to sort of predict what airfares are going to be, 1-2 years from now. So what we recommend is that you go into a travel site that can give you a pretty good approximate of what those actual values are going to be. Okay, so then when we review your budgets, we can say, okay, so it's justified. This it's comparative in this site. Okay. And then we have other. Okay, so we have tolls, we have parking that is part of travel. Okay, make sure you include them. And then local travel, it can also be expense. This covers mileage. Again, use your local policy. You guys know what the expense rates are in your in your island, in your territory. So use yours. If you can't, then use the federal policy. Okay. All right, lodging rates at per diem. Okay, remember that for all OJP funded contracts for events that include 30 or more participants, federal and non-federal, lodging costs for any number of attendees requiring lodging must not exceed the federal per diem rate for lodging. It's very important that we touch on the term participants, okay? It could be that you have people who are local and may not need to stay at a hotel, okay? But if they are participants, if they are taking part in the event, they are counted, okay? So maybe you have 30 people who are going to be participants, but you have 10 who are local and 20 who are going to be lodging. Yes, okay, but for those 20 who are going to be lodging, staying at a hotel, you have to use that federal per diem rate, okay? If you need to check the current rates, you can go to the General Services Administration page. That is linked here, www.gsa.gov, and you can find the current rates. If you have any further doubts about what the rates are, you can always go to the OJ Financial Guide too. All right, so the next category we are reviewing is equipment. Like we said, for travel, if you have your own policy, use that one. If you don't, use the federal policy. Federal policy takes into consideration equipment that has a useful life of more than 1 year or has a fair market value or acquisition cost of $5,000 or more. That's the federal policy. You could have your own, okay, in your territory. It depends on where you are and on your organization, okay? The unit and cost. You should detail what it is and how much it costs. In this example, we say you're going to have one computer that costs $2,000, okay? And then what is it going to be used for? Okay, that's the purpose. How do we tie it to the actual program? How does it serve the program? Okay. All right. So we keep talking about budget. Like I said, the federal definition says equipment is an asset that has a useful life of more than 1 year, or that has a fair market value of 5,000 or more. When your program is over, or you no longer need the equipment, you have to assess the fair market value of that equipment. Okay, if it is more than $5,000, you are going to be asked to follow what your program manager tells you to do to dispose of that equipment, which is usually sell it in the market. You have to you have to match the portion that the federal government gave you. For example, if you have an 80-20 matching and you sell the equipment for $100, please don't sell a $5,000 equipment for $100. But if you do, you would send $80 to the federal agency, and then you could keep the other 20. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So supplies. When we talk about supplies, we're talking about paper. We're talking about Post-its, right? Other office materials that you need. Classify them in major types. Okay, don't go through all the trouble of listing them one by one. Okay, group them. And then in your narrative portion of the budget, then talk about them specifically. And then, like all other categories, you have to sort of justify why you need them and how they're going to be beneficial to the project. Okay, how they're going to serve your program. All right, so we mentioned construction. The truth of the matter is that 99% of the time construction is not allowed. So we sort of present it here, but it's very, very rare. Now, like I said, for all budgets and categories, you need to justify why you need them. Okay. All right. So then the next category is subawards and subgrants. Right. If you're going to give money to your subrecipients, you need to specify that in your budget. Okay. Remember that subawards are not procurements. Okay, not the same thing. Don't mix them. When you do have subrecipients, describe what it is that they're going to do, and why they are essential to your program. How do they actually serve the program? All right. So the next category is procurement. Like I said, be very careful. Do not mix procurement with subawards. Okay. Procurement could be for goods or services, like we know. You should detail your consulting rates. Remember that there are thresholds. You could go over that threshold. We live in territories and islands that maybe we just don't have a market of many professionals or contractors that we can go to. So there's not a lot of competition. So maybe those consultant rates could be higher than the thresholds. That is okay, but you do need to specify that and justify it. Okay. Remember that we always say that consultants should be paid what they're worth, not necessarily what they ask for. Okay. Sole source over 250K, it's the same thing. Remember that you have to justify it. That sometimes in territories and small islands, we don't have a lot of consultants or researchers, so we get it. If you do need additional information, you can always refer to the procurement standards in the general guidance for open competition, which is at 2 CFR section 200.317 through .327. All right, and then we have the other category. This is sort of like the category for the misfits. Whatever doesn't go into any other category, you put here. Remember to classify these by major types. Do not add a line item for each small expense. For example, don't add a line item for electricity, and then for water, and then for telephone expenses, and then for internet expenses. Group that into one category and say utilities, and then in your NAGR portion of the budget, then specify them. Okay. And okay, and if you have an allocation basis, present it. Okay. For example, if you're renting and the price is, like we say here, $22 per square feet, then say that. Okay, multiply 22 by 1200 and actually show the actual amount. All right, and then the last category we're going to cover is indirect costs. This is I like to say a tricky category. A lot of grantees don't understand this. If you don't, feel free to reach any of us at TFSC. We'll explain in detail. But basically, you have an approved rate, and a negotiated rate, or a de minimis rate. Okay. The approved rate, you've actually talked it over with your federal agency, and if you have one approved, that is the one you have to use for any and all awards. Okay. Remember, when you have an approved rate, be very aware of when it expires. If you're in the middle of an award and it expired, you will not be able to claim that indirect cost rate again. So have in mind when it expires and renegotiate it on time. Okay, so that doesn't happen. Okay. And then we have the de minimis rate that I'm not sure. I believe it was a 10%. I'm sorry. That's what I think it is. I'm not entirely sure right now. I'll be sure to include it here. But then this is a rate that you can use whenever you don't have a negotiated rate. Okay, you can always use it. You can always refer to this one. Okay. All right, so having said that, we have covered all budget categories. So now we're going to go into a polling question, and Carlin is going to help us out here. Take it away, Carlin.
All right, thank you, Zarel, for that great presentation. So now we are at the polling question. So in your experience, what are the most common errors found during a budget review? And please vote for your top 3 from the list. So we have federal award amount and budget does not match approved federal award amount. Web-based budgets missing info in required fields, or fields are left blank. The required match percentage has not been met, nor source identified or matches calculated incorrectly. Applicable, unallowed costs are included. Required cost breakdown by categories has not been identified. The budget narrative is incomplete or missing. A current federally approved indirect cost rate negotiated agreement has not been submitted, or responses to the initial budget review inquiries were insufficient. So you can vote for your top 3. Yeah, you want to hover over to this to see the full polling answers. All right. And we have the results here. So number 1 is the budget narrative is incomplete or missing. I'm sorry, number 1 is unallowable costs are included at 53%, followed by the budget narrative is incomplete or missing. And then 3rd, we have a currently federal approved indirect costs rate is negotiated agreement has not been submitted. So this goes into our next slide. We just rehashed the 8. So when we look at the unallowable costs are included. So we want to make sure that within the detailed budget, the cost that you include should be allowable, allocable, necessary, and reasonable. That's how you can determine whether or not it's an allowable cost. But again, if any concerns or if you're not sure, contact your grant specialist for guidance there. Say, hey, I'm not sure about this cost. I looked in the 2 CFR regs. I'm still not sure. What do you think about it? And make sure it's put in writing. So therefore you have justification to whether or not this cost is allowable or not. Another issue is regarding the indirect cost rate negotiated has not been submitted. If there's no approved federal indirect cost rate, then funds budgeted for indirect costs would not be recoverable. So you want to make sure that you have a negotiated agreement in place, or if you're going to use a de minimis rate, then that it's stated as well. Then I will also mention regarding the if you have the initial financial budget review is insufficient. If you receive feedback regarding your budget, just make sure that you review all the responses and provide the required information. Again, if you're unsure, then you want to contact your grant specialist for clarifications. And then I want to talk about one last one, number 5, the required cost breakdown by categories has not been included. So we want to make sure that you provide a detailed cost breakdown for each line item in the budget. For example, personnel, you want to list by each position by title, employee name, and be sure to include the annual salary rate and percentage of time devoted to the project. Another example for travel, you want to itemize the travel expenses for project personnel. You want to show how you calculate the cost, such as airfare, lodging, meals, and you want to really break down each itemized cost. And then for supplies, you want to list items by the supply type, whether it's office supplies, postage, training materials, etc. So you just want to make sure you be as detailed as possible when you're providing your cost breakdown. All right, and then that concludes my presentation, and thank you all for participating in the survey. Now we'll turn it over to Nicole, who will discuss establishing strong internal controls. Nicole?
Thank you, Carlin. So we're going to get started on establishing strong internal controls. So right here, we have a graph that kind of gives us like a go through in terms of the internal control process. So the vision of the organization is what the organization is in business to do. So for example, victims assistance, child services, things along that line. Policies and procedures are the rules and the regulations of your organizations. There are 2 ways to look at this graph. I'm going to go through both of them. You can develop policies and procedures and assess the risk of what you develop and how it hinders the organization. The alternative way is to do a risk assessment and then your policies and procedures. So first, I'm going to go through the alternative way. So you start off with your risk assessment, focus on the risk associated with the business and what can hinder meeting your needs, and your needs as in like what your organization is in business to do. This can assist you with crafting policies and procedures that are high quality. There should be policies and procedures for everything in your organization. They need to be flexible for change or new rules and able to be updated. There should be a frequency as to when they should be updated. So for example, you might assess your internal controls on an annual basis, every 2 years, maybe every 6 months, however it is that's beneficial for your organization. Once policies and procedures are drafted, you have to make sure that you're communicating those changes. And you're communicating those changes to all of your staff, so not just some of them. And also the repercussions of not following policies and procedures, because sometimes people may have it and no one follows it because there's no repercussion if you don't. Or there are repercussions, but people don't know the policies and procedures because they weren't communicated to the staff. Now you're going to monitor your policies and procedures. So when you're monitoring your policies and procedures, like for example, in this process, when you're monitoring your policies and procedures, you're monitoring it to make sure that they are working as intended and they are being followed as intended. So you're assessing it to say, okay, this is the policies and procedures. Is everyone understanding it this way? Is everyone following it this way? Is it working how it's established? So that's what it is in terms of monitoring. And then any communication that your employees are receiving, then they can basically have the opportunity to also give you an update on the efficiency of your policies and procedures, and you can make changes, address discrepancies in your policies and procedures, how they are implemented, if there are any issues with how they were implemented, or if they're not working as intended. It is the management's responsibility to develop and maintain internal control activities for your agency. This is why it's very important to communicate and receive communications from your staff. So in a two-way manner, so you give communication and you also receive communication to make sure that you're assessing that your internal controls are, your policies and procedures are working properly in terms of your internal controls. Now we're going to go over the key standards. So when you're discussing the key standards for policies and procedures, they should meet certain objectives. And that's what we're going to review here. So first, we're talking about a controlled environment. And this is basically your work site, the place that your organization is like housing all of your employees. Risk assessment. So we addressed this earlier, assessing the risks. Then we have controlled activities. That's for various functions within your organization. And then you have information and communication. So we addressed that previously, how you're communicating the information in your organization. And finally, monitoring. And as we mentioned that earlier, how you're monitoring your policies and procedures and internal controls. All right, so we're going to go a little deeper into internal controls. So internal controls should allow for effective and efficient operation. Proper internal controls are strong, and they should be reliable in terms of financial reporting. So whether internal or external, you want to make sure that the processes that checks for strong, you have processes that check for strong internal controls. For example, reviewing documentations for errors. If you have bad information going into your management system, it's going to produce bad information. So if your system is not set up appropriately, then it's going to give you information that is incorrect. When you're thinking about internal controls, you should always think about segregation of duties. No one person should be able to control any type of activity in your organization from start to finish. We understand that we have difference in size of an organization. Some organizations may be large and some may be small nonprofit organizations. Or it could just be because of your territory, you have a smaller staff. That's something that we understand, and people will need to do multiple responsibilities. So, the federal government understands this. But even if that is your situation, you still need to separate your responsibilities in a way that you have strong internal controls. You want to structure organization where someone is going behind different individuals, checking on the information that is being put in the accounting system. For example, you don't want one person filling out the purchase order, then they go and they contact the vendor and purchase the item. They're also the person in receiving, and they're the ones paying the invoice. That'll be way too much responsibility to have one individual doing, and it's really difficult to avoid like fraud in that situation. So you need to break up responsibilities amongst your employees, even if you have like one person doing one part and another person coming behind, and they're rotating those duties. Now we're gonna transition into develop or assess internal controls. So for developing internal controls, a process any non-federal entity designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of their objectives, it should be in these following categories. So the ones that are listed here, and I'm gonna go through it a bit. When you're talking about internal controls, please be mindful that you can provide reasonable assurance, and we know that there's no absolute assurance. It is really difficult to basically be able to say we absolutely know this is never going to happen. So that is understood, but you still want to be very serious in taking, you want to be very serious in terms of your internal controls. and how you're setting things up and trying to make sure you're doing your best in terms of effective and efficient operations. So now we're going to go down in terms of the next level for reliability of reporting and internal and external use. So policies and procedures, as we highlighted, they should be effective and efficient in terms of the operations of your organizations. Your policies should also produce reliable reports. Whether you're talking about internal reports or external reports, they should be reliable. So this should be like, if you have a report, it should be information that is accurate. When they say reliable, it means accuracy. So you have to make sure that you're providing that information that is accurate. And most important, when we're talking about federal programs, they should be in compliance with applicable laws and regulations. And a lot of times you'll hear local laws, federal laws, because you're not trying to only follow one law, you're following all the different laws that are applicable to your organization. We're going to go a little bit further into segregation of duties. For segregation of duty, you want to make sure that the financial system concept is taken into consideration. When you're talking about segregation of duties, this is in terms of the financial management system. There are two primary functions that we're going to go over here. So one is to have a supervisory oversight to review and catch errors. This is very important. On the previous slide, we talked about bad information. Like if you put bad information into a system, it's going to produce bad information. It's not just going to correct it. It's like what you put in is what's going to come out. So it's management's role to review documentations prior and catch those errors before it's input into the system. In terms of people working together, you want to avoid keeping two people responsible on everything, like having the same job function. This will help in terms of reducing the risk for fraud or theft. So you want to make sure that they are not able to conceal any information within the system. So you're basically segregating duties and also making sure it's difficult for anyone to cover up any wrongdoing, and creating an environment where it's difficult for two employees working together to develop a plan to create fraud or theft. And as we continue, there should be written policies and procedures for everything within your organization. So we have a few listed here in terms of payroll, accounts receivables, accounts payables, purchasing, and things along that line. You should make sure you have a policy and procedure for all of these different areas. And based on this, these are the steps that you would follow in terms of that. So you want to make sure that you are initiating any type of transactions. When you're initiating any type of transaction, you have a segregation of duty and a separation of duty. So as previously highlighted, something that I keep mentioning, making sure that one person is not assigned every single area when you're doing a transaction. When you're doing a transaction in the organization. So starting, they're the ones getting the quote, putting together everything, and then still paying. So we'll keep going over that part because that's such an important piece of segregation of duties. The next step is in the approval process. So for any type of transaction, there should be multiple people in the approval process before the item or the service is purchased or paid for. So you have the person who initiates it. There should be someone coming behind to approve it. So that can be the manager above. The next step is recording the transaction. There should be a supervisor or some type of manager who is reviewing the information prior to it going in the system. And then the final step is the reconciliation and the reviewing of the transaction. You want to make sure that you reconcile and you review all your transactions. So for develop or assess internal controls, we're going to go over the basic internal controls principles. So this chart here talks about the basic control principles and summarizes the slides that we previously discussed. You want to make sure that you're developing and implementing policies and procedures, and the policies and procedures are always written. So something that people can easily access. Different types of policies, for example, time and attendance. What is that for your employees to know and follow? Travel, as highlighted previously, you have so many different areas in terms of travel. You have per diem, you have different rules and responsibilities. You want to make sure that people know what to follow, what amount are they supposed to, make sure that they don't exceed what is allowable and what is unallowable. Procurement, same concept. You have different levels of procurement. You have small purchases, you have equipment, all these different things. You want to make sure those things are written down so people know what to follow. And then if you have subrecipients, you should definitely have a subrecipient policy in place. You want to make sure that you have a guide to follow in terms of monitoring, in terms of what's needed, in terms of reporting, timelines, and things along that way. For segregation of duties, as mentioned before, we understand that some organizations are small and they don't have the capacity to have someone individually assigned to every level of your purchasing or different parts of your organization. However, you need to make sure that your organization is set up where people can cross-check and no one individual has control of a transaction from the start to the end. Next, we're talking about restricted access. So this is in terms of the fact that not everyone needs access to all the information in your organization. So financial might be for a certain team, payroll might be for a certain team. Everybody in your organization should not have access to everything. So that's basically what it means in terms of restricting access. Don't provide access to systems, information, assets, unless it's part of the person's responsibility. And then finally, independent verification. As highlighted, having someone who checks others' works. This could be the supervisor, the manager, but just making sure that you have someone checking someone's work. And again, highlighting that if you have changes to your policies and procedures, it should be written and you should basically assess this regularly. So for resources, these are two resources that we're going to highlight here that are beneficial. Whether or not you believe you have strong internal controls, these are different things these are different resources you can access to help you enhance your internal controls. So the first one is the standard for internal controls in the federal handbook. It's also called the Green Book. And it has internal control processes and procedures, and it gives you guidance on that. The second document is the Internal Controls Integrated Framework, and this is from the COSO. Both documents provide you guidance in terms of the federal internal control process, and they are very helpful if you're developing your policies and procedures from scratch or in your organization. You can utilize them as a guide to help you to get started. If you already have an existing organization and you think you have strong policies and procedures in place, you can utilize this to see if there's any way you can enhance it, or just to assess it and see if there's if you're falling short in a place that you thought you were doing extremely well. And yes, these are tools that we definitely recommend you to just look into because they are beneficial. So I know we went over a lot of information, but this is all the different these are all the different tools and resources in terms of internal controls, and also the information that we have to really provide to you, having things written down, having them assessed regularly, making sure that you're separating duties, and making sure that you are enhancing your policies and procedures and communicating to your staff all of this information. This is the end of our presentation in terms of internal controls. And right now we're going to have a breakout discussion on this topic. We have a case summary here, and we're going to basically review the case summary. You'll be assigned to the breakout rooms, and in your breakout rooms, we're going to go over the case summary and discuss it further. Okay. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Selene, and she's going to do the report out.
Hello, everyone, and we will be having a discussion regarding the responses from our groups. And so we will have Nicole, can you share? Were you part of the group?
Yeah, sure. So we actually had 3 people contribute, Florence, Luis, and Caroline. And they went over basically just internal control processes in their organization, what they do to make sure that doesn't happen, how to have strong internal controls. We had someone discuss nonprofit organizations. So basically, if someone's out of the office, they have a backup person, which is like their executive director. And then you also had a discussion on large organizations that have a complete agency being their final approval. For example, Department of Finance is the final approval, and that organization does not even see the final checks. It goes straight to the vendor. So they just highlighted their different processes and how they can avoid issues in terms of internal controls and the fact that you have different people with different responsibilities.
So I'm going to translate a little bit for the Spanish speakers. So nos indica Nicole que las personas en su grupo discutieron que debería de haber una persona siempre cuando, por ejemplo, la persona ya no está o se va del proyecto o una persona está fuera por un tiempo, siempre debería de existir una persona que pueda cubrir, que tenga el conocimiento de la subvención y que tengan políticas y procedimientos para que puedan existir los controles internos sólidos. Gracias, Nicole. Sarel, can you please discuss the responses? Sarel, por favor, puedes comentar con nosotros.
Sure. Yes. So our discussion basically centered on 2 things. The case did not mention that there were any written policies and procedures. So that was a big mistake. We talked about how every organization should have written policies and procedures that could be readily available and quickly referred to in case that you need guidance, right? And then the second part was centered around that there was not a clear explanation or directions on what was expected of the staff, right? We said that the CEO should have made the controller aware of what the duties are, what the expectations are, and the controller also to the accountant. So.
Thank you, Sarel. So, Sarel nos indica que en su grupo, la primera parte, establecieron y comentaron de que deberían de haber políticas y procedimientos escritos y que estuvieran claramente definidos. Y en segunda parte, Sarel nos indicó que debería de existir una comunicación para el personal porque el controlador no comunicó correctamente, no indicó y no preveyó las pautas que deberían seguir el personal. So, gracias, Ariel. Tenemos a Jamel.
I'll be giving the report to the next one. Can you hear me?
Sorry. Yes, thank you, Francis.
Sure. All right. So we talked about the need to develop policies and procedures, having, similar to what other folks talked about, having separation of duties, so you don't have the same person doing the transaction, for example, issuing checks, having training for the new controller and implementing a corrective action plan. And I can translate. Hablamos sobre la necesidad de desarrollar políticas y procedimientos, tener separación de funciones para que no tenga la misma persona haciendo las transacciones y emitiendo los cheques, por ejemplo, y tener capacitación para el nuevo contralor y también implementación de un plan de acción correctivo. Okay, so that's Sharon. Celine, turn it back to you.
So ahora tenemos a Carlin. So ahora tenemos, now we have Carlin, please.
Yeah, I was given the update for Carlin. This is Francis.
Thank you. So in my group, we discussed, there were several discussions, and there were some comments too that one of the person had just started on the job of managing grants, and the person that had left didn't provide her any guidance and didn't have the experience managing grants. And so she says that there should be always training, and there should be subject matters managing grants, and not just anybody. So she had a lot of issues at first because they had a site visit, and the shape when they came was not in good standing. And so they also indicated that there should be communication, clear communications with all the new personnel, and communicating, like they had mentioned before, making clear guidelines and expectations of what you expect, and always have for new personnel, always have, making sure that they know what are the new policies and procedures. And also from OCFO, they also mentioned us that they should be that your policies and procedures should be clear and written, and then make sure that when you report quarterly, your books match what you're reporting. So that's why it's very important. And so that was basically what they say. So en nuestro grupo comentaron que deben de existir varios políticas y procedimientos que deberían de ser comunicados a los nuevos empleados. Una de las personas indicó que una de las personas que se fue y dejó la subvención no estaba calificada, y cuando ella tomó el proyecto no estaba en buenas condiciones, y cuando ella tuvo una auditoría encontraron muchos problemas. Ella dice que siempre deben estar entrenados y debe siempre de existir una persona que esté proveyendo la capacitación a otra persona, o cubrir a la otra persona en caso está de vacaciones, para que eso no suceda. También hubieron comentarios de que sus reportes siempre deberían de coincidir con los reportes que usted reporta en el FFR, en los reportes programáticos y fiscales. Y bueno, muchísimas gracias a todos por participar. Thank you everyone for participating.
All right. So now we're going to open it up for any questions that folks may have, questions that maybe came up during the breakout, or any questions for anything that happened during the presentation. So feel free to unmute or put it in the chat box.
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
So I'm new in my position, but I've already been studying. I'm already certified in this grant thing, but I'm trying to still get clarity. So I'm thinking about the scenario that we just read over, and I'm just wondering, to my understanding, when a grant recipient receives the grant, there's several different roles that have to be in place, right? One of them is a financial manager, is that correct?
Yes, you're talking about Ingest Grants, right?
I'm sorry?
You're talking about Ingest Grants?
Yes. So, but wouldn't that person, like in this, I'm referring to the scenario we just read, wouldn't that person be monitoring also the internal controls on a regular basis, making sure that the policies and procedures are being done properly? Because from that scenario, okay.
Yeah, it could be the same person, or it could be other people, another person, or a combination of people that are working on that. But feel free, OCFO, to chime in. But definitely, it's the responsibility of the key people that are signing the grant, as well as other people that are working on the grant, to make sure they understand the federal requirements and for the grant, whether through the grant conditions in the award or 200 CFR or the DOJ financial guide. But I don't know if anybody from OCFO wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, I'll just add, this is Crystal McNeil Wright, Associate CFO of Grants Financial Management. So, and I apologize because I'm not well versed on all of the different roles on the grantee side. I know them on our side, but like Francis said, like that particular, what it used to be called was an FPOC, right? The financial point of contact. It's a new name in Just Grants and whatever that is. I'm sorry if I think it is the financial manager, but that person is the person that's responsible for, submitting the reports, the FFRs, things like that. So they are the ones, and I say responsible in a sense of you're the person in the system that's going in to do all of that, but certainly the organization itself has to have internal controls in place. And there might be other folks that are a part of that, and clearly a CFO would need to be a part of all of those internal controls, the managers that are there, but the person who is kind of has that role in Just Grants to go in and submit and things like that. They should always have someone doing some sort of check and balance outside of that. You know what I mean? It's not only on that one person. Every organization has to have somebody in place that are doing those checks and balances prior to the submission. So that's what that person who has that role in Just Grants is doing. I hope that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. I was just wondering because it said something about they had gone a year with the accountant not doing something properly. So in my head, I was just thinking about all the different roles that should have caught that.
Yeah, definitely should have been a lot more. There should have been some CFO involvement there. There should have been some supervisory type involvement there. There was a lot of things not happening there. And some checks and balances and reconciliations along the way prior to even submitting. So, and we do find that as some of our monitors may go out, we may, some of the findings we have is there's not proper reconciliation going on. And so that's why one of our number one findings is typically not having proper policies and procedures. And if you do, you're not following them. And those procedures are saying who does what. Who's going to be looking at this. And so those types of things need to be in place and then they need to be followed. So, so yes, there should be some checks and balances, not on that 1%.
Okay, thank you. A great question. So la pregunta era sobre, hay un gerente financiero que es en Just Grants, ¿verdad? Y si esa persona es responsable para los procedimientos, para asegurar que hay controles internos establecidos. Y estamos hablando que el CFO tiene que ser parte de eso y puede haber otra persona adicional del gerente financiero para la subvención, pero es una necesidad tener alguien para hacer los controles, los balances. Okay. So thank you for the question. I'm now going to turn it over to Jamil, who's going to do the next step and close out.
All right. Thank you, Francis. So we're coming to the end of our session. So let's review some resources, next steps, and some final takeaways. So we use the LMS to review schedules, access learning materials, complete knowledge checks, check current progress, receive certification, and access FAQs. And also you'll notice in the chat that I posted the English version of today's slides, along with some useful links. Please review these resources on the LMS, and these resources include our fact sheets, guide sheets, infographics, job aid checklists, and videos. Please leave your name in the chat or contact us if you have not been able to log into the LMS. And as we mentioned earlier, by logging into the LMS or the learning management system, you will not only be able to access the training resources, but also take a knowledge check after every session. And you will be able to find the session 2 knowledge check after this session. The knowledge check consists of 12 multiple choice true-false questions based on the resources and live session content. You must receive a passing score of at least 70% for successful completion of the session. If you have any questions, please contact us and we will be happy to help you. Here at OJP TFSC, we provide the Virtual Support Center, or the VSC, and you can request a consultation call with the email address provided in the chat. So anytime during or after the series, if you or your team need any type of additional training or technical assistance, please let Zarel or Nicole know, or you can also email us with the email provided right there in the chat. And we'll make sure we'll get back with you within 24 hours within the next business day. We're proud to partner with OCFO in supporting grantees. So if you have any questions for OCFO, you can email their customer service center at ask.ocfo@usdoj.gov. And that email is also provided in the chat. We provide training, technical assistance, and resources to enhance financial management capacity for grantees in the U.S. territories to improve financial management of federal awards. And you can visit our website and learn more about OJP TFSC with the address that I posted in the chat. And you can also subscribe to our email updates from OJP TFSC with the link provided in the chat as well. We look forward to seeing you on February 15th. And that will be titled Successfully Managing Your Grant Award Through Understanding Classifications, Standards, and Types of Costs, and Preventing Fraud, Waste, and Abuse. In your calendars, you should see an appointment, and you will be able to join the same way that you joined today. And we'll be exploring topics of internal controls, procurement, fraud, waste, and abuse.